Hello everybody and welcome back to Reprieve Media CIC's coverage of World Radio Day 2019 based on dialogue, tolerance and peace. What we've got coming up for you now is an interview carried out by UNESCO with a man called Michal Rahfaldt. He is the Executive Director of the Children's Radio Foundation, a non-profit organisation that works to develop and support youth radio projects across Africa. Michal is an anthropologist, radio producer, journalist, trainer and academic specialising in youth media and education. Before joining the Children's Radio Foundation in 2007, Michal taught journalism, media studies and social anthropology at the University of Cape Town. This chat is around the influence of radio on youth empowerment, something which is obviously very important. It's a very interesting interview and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for listening.
We have with us here today Mr. Michal Rahfaldt, the Executive Director of Children's Radio Foundation. Thank you, Michael, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Would you share with us briefly the work of your organization?
So at the Children's Radio Foundation, we work with community radio stations to create opportunities for dialogue and skill building and leadership among youth in communities across Africa. And we have 75 youth radio projects across 6 countries where we give youth the tools and the skills to produce radio and really put them in the driving seats of radio stations. And our goal is really to get them in conversation about the issues they face and to use radio in their communities to work together to tackle some of the most pressing issues.
So in these radio projects, how do the youth participate in them?
Well, we have a philosophy of working with young people where we're not always choosing youth who are the best and the brightest and the loudest and the most articulate, but we're really looking for young people who can benefit from the skills of learning radio. So perhaps it is a boost in confidence or some leadership skills, communication skills. So at each of our community radio sites, we work with local radio stations to select a really wide range of youth from the community. So this involves mapping out the community to look at some of the own divisions and differences that may not be evident on the surface, and to really make sure that they're creating a group of youth radio reporters who represent the diversity of their community. And by doing that, we're really seeing ourselves as enabling a much richer conversation of varying perspectives where young people can work together in the community to really tackle the issues that are important to them. So for us, youth participation is really what drives this project. Young people do everything at the radio station, from deciding on the topics that they want to cover, to going out and doing the reporting and gathering interviews, to also sitting behind the audio booth and recording and ensuring that the broadcast goes out in a very high-quality way to their community. So for us, youth participation is not just on some superficial level, but is really giving youth full control over what is going out on the airwaves.
So why is radio chosen as the medium? What do you think it's radio's unique contribution in empowering youth?
Well, radio as a medium of dialogue and conversation is really important to what we are trying to achieve with our work that cuts across a real wide range of issues, of health issues, education, human rights issues. We're tackling a lot of very difficult conversations. And radio lets people say what's on their mind, and also through the anonymity of being somewhat guarded and their face not being seen, and they don't have to necessarily say their name, the anonymity allows certain kinds of conversations to emerge that don't come through other mediums. So we really try to use radio for its ability to promote dialogue in communities and to get people speaking who may not otherwise have those kinds of conversations in their community. And also for us working across 6 African countries, radio is really Africa's first choice, and the way that one can really reach quite deeply into communities. And when we work with youth in our radio projects, they are tackling issues in ways that really represent the unique context of the places in which they grow up. And community radio stations allow us to do just that, to speak in local languages in ways that relate to local people and really address concerns in locally nuanced ways.
So can you share with us some of the local issues that are discussed in your youth radio projects?
Sure. We take on a broad range of issues from adolescent health to education, jobs and access to employment, climate change, LGBTI rights, and even showcasing local stories and local success stories of young people in the community, and even opportunities for youth locally that they can pursue. Each of the youth radio shows represents a really entertaining and informative mix of content that youth are going out and collecting in their communities, and using radio production guides that give them the factual content they need to produce a really high-quality show about the issue. So they're not just saying what's on their mind, but they're being informed by research and data about what the specific issue, how it manifests itself in their community. So more than anything, we're really interested in the fact that young people can go out and map these issues as they are happening in their own community, and really use that as a way of tackling the health, the education, or other human rights issues. For example, in one community in South Africa, it might mean that youth who are migrants are excluded from education, and their struggle is to be seen and heard and to be enabled to go back into the school system. But a community down the road may have a very different issue where they have high levels of dropouts. So working with community radio stations, youth and communities are able to make the wider community aware of that and get them talking about it and addressing that. So we really use our programs to bring out those kinds of local nuances and get those conversations started.
So do young people also participate in decision making about the topics that they want to do?
Yes, youth do everything from deciding the topic to dictating the approach that they want to take to a particular topic. How we work is at each radio station we have a mentor who is usually an employee of the radio station who helps to guide the young people through the process, but is very focused on the fact that youth are directing and guiding this process and making their own decisions. And that's, I think, one of the added values that the Children's Radio Foundation is able to add to a lot of these radio stations, is to get them to think about how they can work very productively with youth and to encourage youth participation without taking over and deciding that, oh, I'm an adult and my opinion is better and this is the way that we should go. Youth participation takes a little bit more time, and there's a lot of learning that happens along the process. But we're really set on the idea that young people have very fixed ideas about what needs to be addressed in their communities, and if they are given the platform to do so, can do some really incredible things to mobilize their fellow young people to take action around issues.
So are there any, difficulties that you faced in your projects in reaching out to youth?
I think some of the difficulties we face in reaching out to youth would be around talking about quite sensitive topics where young people are maybe very openly and freely speaking about issues of sex and health issues and maybe some difficult conversations they wouldn't otherwise have with their parents or elders in their communities. And we sometimes get elders and family members calling into the radio stations and saying things like, what gives you the right to talk about this topic? You're a young person. And I think what's been really interesting is to see how youth engage with that, and they're able to very often respectfully speak to these people who are criticizing their right to speak and to share with them the importance that we need to be talking about these issues. Otherwise, the results are high rates of teenage pregnancy, perhaps high rates of school dropouts, and these are conversations that are very important to the community. So I think part of it is coming up against community norms of youth participation and the ceiling that dictates the extent to which young people are able to contribute, and really working with the youth for them to manage that properly so they can actually bring about a very fruitful, peaceful conversation that's based on productive dialogue.
Does any of your projects focus on the topic of gender equality or inequality?
Yes. In our work, gender and power, they're at the heart of all that we do. And we make sure that every issue that we take on, from health to education to human rights, is really examined from a gender perspective. So education, for instance, how are young girls perhaps excluded from schools in certain areas in Zambia? Or how is their education not invested in by their families? So our question would be, how can we as a radio project and young people really get people thinking about these issues through the gendered lens and getting communities to speak about it? So through health topics, we focus a lot on adolescent health and particularly young girls getting health services and accessing sort of health services around sexual health. And we really see everything that we do as an opportunity to address gender issues, to chip away at power, and really get people thinking about these issues in a quite complex and intersectional way.
Yeah. So the last question, on this year's World Radio Day celebrates the theme Dialogue, Tolerance and Peace. What is your World Radio Day message?
I think the key to getting along is really talking about it, and radio can be so important in getting communities speaking and working through issues. And I suggest that all of the listeners to radio take time to do just that, to listen and to listen deeply and really try to learn from someone whose life or views are quite different from you.
Thank you, Michael, for being with us today.
Great. Thanks for having me.